explore more of the world, engage with others, and embrace global cultures.
Ontdek de wereld, zoek contact met anderen en omarm wereldwijde culturen.
All right. Welcome to Today's Explorers, a series dedicated to sharing the inspiring stories and varying perspectives of those who've chosen to seek out life-changing adventure. Welcome to the show, Tobias and Manon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. I wonder if you could describe where you are in the world and what you can see, smell, touch.
Yeah, you want to get a go at this?
Yeah, sure. So we're in Zimbabwe right now, quite northernly, so above Harare, the capital. We put up camp in a very uncharming gravel pit, but it's one of the places where you can be in a calm spot and we know it's going to be good for the day. So I wouldn't say it's very pretty, but we do have an outlook over a hilly green landscape. We're in the middle of the rainy season, so it's actually pretty nice. And all around us, well, an old gravel pit. I wouldn't say that's very describe-worthy.
Very inspiring, but maybe for the ones who don't know, so Zimbabwe is more or less in the southern Africa region, and we've actually been in this region before. And talking about the smells and the sights, when we were here last time, it was actually dry season. Most of our trip has been in dry season, so then everything was like grayish, beige, like everything was dry.
Yeah.
And now what Manon was saying, we're overlooking like a green landscape. So it's completely different now. It's humidity. The humidity is high. There is flies everywhere, but the sights are beautiful this time of year.
That's wonderful. So the benefits of nice rain is showing.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. We had a small rainy season back in December when we were in Tanzania. And I think that did us a lot of good because we were really done with the dry bush. Yes, it's easier for spotting wildlife, but we were ready to be in a green, lush landscape. So the rainy season in Tanzania gave us that. And now that we're on our way back south, we've had a bit of rainfall in Zambia and now in Zimbabwe. So it's good to see places in two different seasons.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
That's wonderful. Great. Well, let's get into it. Let's get a good understanding of your background, where you're from, and sort of the lead up to when you started to get into exploration.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take the lead. So we're both from the Netherlands, both from the south, an hour apart more or less, southeast. And I would say, okay, let's go all the way back. So I've been camping with my family, with my parents and my younger brother all my life, I would say. And I would say it started a little bit already in 2016. No, when I was 16, sorry. When I bought a three-wheeled covered scooter thing, a Piaggio AP50 from Italy, and used that to go camping with friends. Then I got a Land Rover Series 3 ambulance from the army to travel around Europe, but just for, I would say, holidays, weekends away, stuff like that, nothing too big. And then after a few years, I got our current vehicle, the Defender 110, primarily just for weekends and holidays as well, but then I've kind of found out about the capabilities of the vehicle. And then in the years following that, I did 2 Europe trips. I graduated university as an applied biologist, started working, just random jobs, nothing too exciting. It was fun, but good paying, but nothing too exciting in the adventure sphere. Did 2 trips in Europe, and of course, that's kind of the start of the adventure, because that's what really got me going, like a year there or 8.5 months there, stuff like that. But the real switch came just before we left for Africa 3 years ago. You want to dive into that?
Yes, I met Toby 3 years ago now.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about this. Actually, right before you were supposed to leave. So on Instagram, he had his bio saying, leaving 1st of July, still looking for a travel buddy. And I was like, that's kind of odd. It was end of May, so we had, I think, 5 weeks until your departure date. And I was looking for something exciting. That's when I asked him, are you still looking for someone? And if so, like, who are you looking for? What are you looking for? And within 5 weeks, we said yes. We did a camping trip to get to know each other. And we left for Africa although you wanted to go to South America, but I said, well, let's just go for Africa. I think both of those choices were gut feelings, and my gut told me to go here, and Tobias, his gut feeling told him to go South America. And I had no prior experience with overlanding, so regardless of where we would have gone, I didn't know where it would be on the grade of like easy to difficult. So for me, it was like, sure, Africa sounds fun, let's do it.
Yeah, and actually, my second trip in Europe was supposed to be to South America. We would ship the vehicle, me and a friend. So my sights were set on South America years ago, I would say. But then COVID came, so that's why we did Europe instead.
Oh.
Through that friend that I did the previous 2 trips with, Sven, he's actually the one that connected with Manon, and via him we got to know each other. So that's a real just online. So that's a real coincidence as well.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you said Africa, I said South America, but I was like, anything outside of Europe is fine by me. If you definitely want to go to Africa, we'll just do Africa.
That's amazing. I love that you met online in today's world. That seems very appropriate. And then
yeah,
Manon, you were just up for joining this random person you met.
Well, long story short, I was really seeking a way out of my current situation back then. So I had my own business and I just wasn't feeling aligned with what I was doing. And I always told myself, I'm going to travel the world one day. And I never really grabbed that opportunity when I could. And I felt, well, I had no strings attached to anything but my business at that moment. I thought now is the moment. So I did 2 things, which was 1, apply for a job in Kenya.
Oh.
And 2, send a message to Toby. And then because I applied for the job in Kenya, I was actually a bit Africa focused, which is why I, voted for Africa for us for the trip. Funny thing is that it took us 2 years and 7 months to get to Kenya. Before that was, I had no clue what to expect. I did not read up upon Morocco culturally, continent-wise, no prior knowledge.
Kenya is just Kenya, and Africa is so diverse. So it's just like a small region that you read up on, and then everything is way different than that.
Yeah, and Tobias said, well, we can kind of postpone until maybe October, then I can go to Europe with my friends in the summer, do some hikes and some fun stuff. And I told him, that sounds like a lot of fun, but if you're going to wait with me until October, then I'm going to do something else. Because I know myself, I'm quite spontaneous, but also impulsive. So if you're going to wait, I'm probably not around anymore to join the adventure. So we left with, I would say, minimal preparation, only like vaccinations, a second passport. And what else?
Maybe jump back because we did that little afternoon of chit-chatting.
Yeah.
Then we went on the weekend, and that's when we decided, let's do Africa, let's just do it. And because we had so much in common. We love the outdoors, we love photography, we both boulder, like the climbing. We both studied the same studies in school, but just different years, and so much more. Everything kind of came together, but then we said yes. She said, we have to do it quickly, else I'm going to change my mind. Then we had 5 weeks of preparation before we left. The vehicle was more or less ready, so that was our luck. We were still working full time, and just in the evening hours, we were preparing this trip in 5 short weeks, and then...
So it was only the very necessary stuff that we arranged.
Yeah. New passports, vaccinations, no visas, because the visas, it's so hard to predict when you're where. And to go into that process so close to the trip, we just said, let's figure it out along the way, which worked. So yeah, it's been, the start was like going with a stranger, basically, still at that point, and just diving into the unknown. And we took 5 weeks in Europe to get to know each other, and the car, and making, because I had the car was ready, but I did a full overhaul of the interior just before we left, and that was like finished, I would say, basically days before we left.
Wow.
We didn't do any testing, so we used our time in Europe to basically figure out the car, the camp life together, each other. Yeah, and then in the months following that, we got together as a couple.
It went all really quick. I mean, when you're 24/7 together, we went from strangers to friends in just a matter of days, if not hours. Then
the rest followed.
The rest followed.
That's
followed.
amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like you
Yeah.
have the workings of an interesting dating show. Throw people together,
It
send them on
is.
a camping. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
because the first date, you're already in the bush. Oh, you have to go
Yeah.
to the toilet. Like, here is a shovel.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun in the beginning because it was all so awkward. And I of course, because I wasn't familiar with overlanding or traveling this way, things were really new to me. So, of course, you want to ask stuff, but you also don't want to discuss topics that are still a bit taboo or scary or anything like that. So we had a lot of fun in the first days, me making mistakes. We had, I'm just going to tell you this, like a stool to sit on when you go to the toilet
Yeah.
so that you don't have to squat. And apparently there was a specific way on how to sit on it. On day 4, I decided to use it and I sat on it wrongly. And within mere seconds, I was sitting on the ground instead of on the chair.
It just cracked and it fell open, it broke, and she was on the floor in the forest.
And then we were we were traveling through France at that time, and we were just visiting camp shops, sorry, to sit on chairs to see which one would be appropriate as a replacement.
Well, I guess going into the adventure that you did, were there any special skills that you did bring, Menon, that you've used on the trip?
Well, we discussed this a couple of days ago, actually, and I don't think I really did. Like, I'm fond of cooking and of baking, and I think that definitely helps. In the Netherlands, they say a love of a man goes through his stomach. So although you also love cooking, it's always good to have something like when we have a very stressful day, make a good meal, and well, I think it's a real morale booster.
Yeah, but you were saying no at first, but looking from my perspective, like it's not only about I do the mechanics of a vehicle. That's a skill, of course, but looking at you, like there's no specific skill like that, but I think overlanding for the most part is about the mindset, being flexible, being adaptive, and that skill you have. Else we wouldn't have been here like so far into the trip, so many years on. So
Yeah, okay.
yeah, and maybe we left with the aim of traversing the whole African continent for a year. For a year, our savings lasted longer, but yeah, of course, not for 3 full years. So on the side, we have multiple projects going on, but we also write a lot, and that's a skill you bring as well. Like you write the stories that bring in some funds sometimes not, like to keep us going. So yeah, but mostly the mindset is so important and you brought that along. So, and the positive energy, yeah.
Hard skills and soft skills, so it's a mixture of those both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Tobias, you mentioned the mechanical skills, but any other skills that you think you bring?
I don't know.
Navigation ones.
Yeah, I love to plan ahead. And then because we go remote so often and then also like for weeks on end, I love just the preparation of that. Seeing, okay, how far can we get? What do we need? Diesel, petrol for cooking, water. Where can we fill water? Do
Yeah.
we have everything to do it? And do we have everything to do it when things go wrong? And yeah, I just love that.
And how are you planning all that? Is that with like internet, the phone? I made the comparison to when my parents did it in the 70s was all maps and compass, but now we have GPS. So is that how you're planning routes?
It must be completely different than in that time because it's a mix. I would say we use Google Maps just to look at the basics like routes, but also Google Maps is mostly for us for satellite mapping, so we can see what the area is like. As often, like in Africa and the remote regions, Google Maps doesn't really show you the tracks on the normal mappings. Just on the satellite imagery, you can kind of see where a track is. So I use different apps, iOverlander, Tracks for Africa, Maps.me, Osmond, the Garmin Overlander combined with Google satellite imagery, just throw everything together and then see how routes take shape.
Yeah, not to forget, we actually acquired some paper maps in Southern Africa, and in the countries that we had them for, it's been a really great asset. So
Yeah.
it's not just fun, like drawing the route you drove and like seeing where all the things are, but also having this ability to see an overview on your table as well as to really see the details.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a hassle to have paper maps for all the countries, especially because Africa has so many. But definitely in the future, I would like to buy the maps before we go, because it just gives this extra layer and I think really a baseline for where you start off with planning your trip.
Yeah, so macro, we plan the routes on the paper maps, just drawing lines. And then for the micro adventures within a country, and that can still be like 3 weeks off grid, but that's when we throw all the apps together, satellite imagery, and then start planning a route. And then when it comes to preparations, local knowledge and what we hear locally, plus iOverlander, etc., the apps are super helpful because then they will also indicate, oh, there is only 2 petrol stations in the far north, and one is mostly out of diesel. You might be lucky with the other one. Then you know, okay, there's only one option that's not sure. Okay, then we plan accordingly. And sometimes you just don't know. You still just go and hope for the best. And you know that if there are people living there, the worst case that can happen is that you end up being there for a certain amount of time, just waiting it out.
Yeah.
But if there are people, if they can live there, we can probably live there too and ask for help if necessary. And you have to be mindful, of course, because looking at what we did recently in northern Kenya, like we don't want to be stuck there due to stupidity and then have to take resources away from the people there. But yeah, if you know what's around, you can kind of estimate, like we can manage. And if something really goes wrong, there is like a reasonable village where we will be able to find maybe some food and some water without being a burden on those people. So yeah, that's a bit how we plan, just planning really well, but also trying to take a leap of faith and just, yeah, be confident in it. Yeah, and trust that things will work out.
Yeah.
And I think looking back at 3 years ago when we started, we have developed this navigational skill and planning skill. Although we might not realize it day to day, when you look back at it, we were in Senegal and we went to the capital, Dakar, and bought a lot of canned goods because we thought, oh, we're going to be so quick in our travels. At that time, we still thought we were going to be quick. And once we reach Congo, there's not going to be any food. We had zero knowledge. So we took a lot of canned goods and we stashed them in the car and we drove around them with them for months until in Gabon we got stuck and that was when we ate it. So we were so oblivious to reality. And now you know, okay, what Tobias is saying, even if you're in a really remote region, but you know there's local people, if they have food or the ability to fish or something, then we have food and water as well. So yeah, we've become better at it. I think we've come a whole
yeah. Not over prepare well, but know that you'll manage whatever happens, at least if there are people there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So I guess it took a little while to get your rhythm. Do you think that you've established that now?
Well, a rhythm is depending on how you look at it. We had our rhythm quite quickly. So the funny things in the morning, I would make breakfast, you would make coffee. We had a certain way of doing things. So without really communicating, I think as a team we did really well from the start and all the way to now. It really depends on the country and on our plans, on the weather, all these factors that you can't really, well, control how our daily rhythm goes.
I think the biggest challenge is finding the right rhythm with travel, days off, which we don't really do, and work, because we capture a lot of content with our cameras, we write a lot of stories, and especially working on that part, like the story writing, the editing of the photos. We have Ubuntu Magazine, our nature conservation magazine that we keep running remotely. Trying to manage that's the biggest challenge for finding a rhythm, because travel, you're still relatively in control, I would say. Managing a project that you say, okay, we have to work this afternoon, but you don't really know where you will be this afternoon. You don't know if there are people, if you need electricity, the sun has to shine for the solar panels. You don't know what the weather is like. It's that makes it challenging on the rhythm.
And also we change our rhythm accordingly. With the work, when we were in northern Kenya, we knew, okay, the days are very hot, so we're not going to work during the day. So we're just going to have really long driving days, and we'll make sure that we have simple meals in the evening, not like 1.5 hours of cooking, so that we have some time in the evening to get some work done. Now that we are in Zambia, or we were in Zambia last week, we knew where we were going to sleep because we knew the country, and we'd driven part of the route that we were driving. So we said, instead of driving in the morning and doing the work in the afternoon and evening when we're already a bit tired, let's just work in the morning while we're fresh. And because we know where we're going to end up in the evening, like gravel pits or campsites or whatsoever, we can just drive, even if it's like 200 kilometers, which is quite a lot for us, we can start driving at 1 p.m. and still be like okay with where we're going to end up and know that it's going to be fine.
Yeah, recently that rhythm really took over. Doing some laptop work in the morning or working on the car, improving things, fixing things in the morning, and then covering a little bit of distance in the afternoon when it's hot.
So we vary our schedules and rhythms, I would say, depending on where we are and what we need. Yeah. That's how we do it.
Interesting. You mentioned that obviously you've traveled to Africa, but maybe you could say which countries you've been to so far and what are the next 3 you're looking forward to next?
So we started in the Netherlands. So let's say for this trip, right?
Yeah.
That's maybe easier. So we started in the Netherlands. Then in the first 5 weeks, we kind of looped around Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, all the way down to
France.
Yeah, then we did France, Andorra, Spain, Portugal, back into Spain. And that's when we took the ferry to Morocco. And from there, we kind of made our way down from Morocco to South Africa via the west coast, mostly sticking to coastal countries except for Sierra Leone and Liberia. So that we went a little bit inland, but we've been inland quite far. We're just meandering through a country, but sticking to the coastal countries more or less. To South Africa, then we went up. We went in Lesotho to the mountain kingdom there, and then to Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, then to the coast in Mozambique, then Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya. And that's actually a few weeks ago that we reached our northern point on the east coast in northern Kenya. And that's actually when we made the choice to relatively quickly drive back to South Africa from northern Kenya to there, which is what we're doing now to rebuild Rafiki to make it ready for the coming years of travel. So we basically came down the west coast, up the east coast, now back to South Africa to do that overhaul to make sure that Rafiki, our defender, is livable, I would say, for the coming years of travel. And we don't really know what it looks like exactly, what it's going to look like, but we do know that we want to keep traveling, but also in colder climates. And with the work that we do, we're really looking forward to having like an indoor space in the car. So that's the aim of everything that we're going to do.
And then coming back to the countries that we visited, for someone who might know the map of Africa really well, we have decided not to visit Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi right now. It was a really tough decision, but we had a bit of a time restraint when flying home. So we are going to ship from South Africa and fly back to the Netherlands this summer. And we said, well, we'd rather spend some time in South Africa. And we hope one day, maybe coming from the north, so coming in through Egypt and then driving down to visit Uganda and Rwanda. And otherwise, I'm sure we're going to come back in any other way because we definitely want to visit those countries in the future.
Yeah, and even in the future. So we have some general dreams of one day going east. I'm not saying the Far East, but more like Central Asia, Middle East, etc. And we said, even if we drive to Oman, ship the car to Africa, do that northeastern part of Northern Africa, ship it back to Oman, because those shipping options are still relatively affordable. And then continue the loop there. So, yeah.
So no South America on the horizon yet.
Yeah. So we said, let's do that south to north, most likely. Somewhere in the coming years, but that's like a rough way of saying we really don't know. But it's still in the cards and we would love to. But yeah, with all our future plans, we said at least now we've done the quite challenging parts. If one day there might be kids and stuff, South America, Northern America is, yeah, just easier. More, I wouldn't say civilized, more developed. Like there's access to whatever you need, basically, wherever you go in most regions. Yeah, South America on the list.
Yeah, that's and there's a lot of travelers who do the South America, so it's a proven track. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
By the time we get there, I wouldn't per se choose the Pan Am, like do only the route up, but I would try to do it like we did in Africa, really like swirling around and going to remote places. But as we said, it's something in the cards, but we don't know when.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many countries on our list to visit. What we are really seeking right now is an area, not specifically a country, but an area where we can go for hikes really easily, spend some time with Nimba, our dog, and just let her run freely. And the temperatures in Africa are, generally speaking, I would say quite hot. So we tend to hike a lot less, although we're really outdoor people. So I guess a place with mountains, forests, lakes is something where you can expect us in the coming year at least.
Yeah. Quickly mentioned we're going back to the Netherlands because we're doing that because we haven't seen our friends and family in 3 years. But the immediate plans during that time or after that time is to visit regions in the area of Europe, just where we can be remote, where we can go hiking or climbing, then take an afternoon swim in the river, make a campfire, cook some food, and then be slightly more active outside.
Yeah. Where would you recommend people visit then? If you could pick the top 3 that you would recommend.
The top 3 in Africa.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Really depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because in general, it's really hard to generalize places, but I would say you can kind of say you have West Africa, which is slightly rougher, less development, a lot of people still, because that's what we found. There are people basically everywhere in Africa. That part, you have some main roads, but you can easily go off grid into the mud, into an adventure. So if you're looking for a real rough adventure, like West Africa in general is a really good place. If you're more like into the, I don't know, adventuring on your own terms, maybe combined with a bit of wildlife, Southern Africa in general is really good. And then East Africa combines a bit of the both, I would say. It has a lot of diversity in landscapes. There's wildlife. But there are also quite a bit of rougher stretches where you can really see how the people used to live, like away from the developed cities that feel a bit like home, I would say.
Talking specifically about countries, Kenya has really surprised us. So we were there earlier this year in January, February, and we didn't know, well, of course, I knew a little bit what to expect, but we definitely went way beyond both our expectations because it's still very adventurous. I do think it's an easy country to travel through because you have supermarkets, good supermarkets basically everywhere, and people are generally accustomed to tourists being there. So
which can be a pro or a con, but
it can be both, yes, but I think it makes for easier travel.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of exploration possibilities in the very north, in the west. We unfortunately didn't visit the coast, but we heard that is great as well. So Kenya is definitely one that I would recommend people.
Morocco for diversity and landscapes and culture.
Culturally, it was very
really easy to explore the culture of Morocco because it's just welcoming. You can easily drive to places, visit locals, really dive into it. I loved the jungles of Gabon, and Angola was one of the biggest surprises, I would say, of the whole continent. Just the diversity of landscapes, the friendliness of the people, and Angola really let you pick your adventure. You can kind of stick to the main roads and cover a lot of distance, and then along the way you get to pick your adventure and you can go to a super cool area without people, or for like a day or a few days or a few weeks, or you can really go to regions with all these tiny local villages where nobody ever comes. So Angola was really a highlight of the trip.
And we did a lot of hiking in Lesotho actually.
Yeah.
Because of course it's very high altitude, the temperatures are much better. The sun is also very intense when it comes out, but I would say generally speaking, the temperatures are better. So we did a lot of hiking there, and just the landscapes are phenomenal. We both love photography. I would love to spend days there just taking in the scenery and trying to grab the most epic shots that you can imagine. But unfortunately, we only had 2.5 weeks there last time. So it might take a while before we get back.
There's always the future.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, let's shift gears slightly. Let's talk about Rafiki. Maybe you could give an overview of it, he or she, and what it is, and any modifications.
Yeah, so Rafiki, I think we say always that it's a he. So, when we/I, we always say we these days. When we got it, it was it was standard. No customizations,
Let's
nothing.
start with what it is.
Yeah, so it's a Land Rover Defender 110 from 2000, which was like the TD5 era, best of world spec. So it has like the axles and stuff and the fuel tank of the slightly newer vehicle, but it came with the older, super simple, underpowered mechanical engine, which has been nice for overlanding because when things happen, we can repair it ourselves. But it was just standard 9-seater station wagon. And then over the years, we've built it out, and then first a wooden interior and just a galvanized roof rack, and then 2 revision rounds later, it now has aluminum roof rack, storage boxes on top, solar panels, roof tent, awning, shower cabin. That's mostly top and sides. Then on the outside, we also made drop-down tables with the recovery boards on there. First on both sides. Now, since a few weeks, it's only one side, and the other side has jerry can holders for a little bit of extra water storage. The inside is now a fully aluminum interior that I made just before we left, with a bed system that we can't use anymore because we have too much stuff. And then drawers on both sides, a huge like slide out kitchen, the back where our stove sits, where the freezer and the fridge sit, where we store our pots and pans. It has a built-in compressor. We use the Lifesaver jerrycan filtering system, and these days we actually carry 4 jerrycans, so 3 normal jerrycans, and what we mostly have is a purified jerrycan, just a full jerrycan of purified water, the Lifesaver that we use to filter it, that's full, and then 2 unfiltered jerrycans, and then we just fill one with the other, pump it, etc.
Uh,
So that works really well. Dual battery system, but we noticed that that was and still is kind of lacking because especially our freezer, like that dual setup, just uses so much electricity. And then now in the rainy season, the clouds are mostly present every day, and the freezer uses a lot of electricity, so our battery can't really cope with it really well. And
But
then, yeah.
did you want to say more about the outfitting or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe for some Land Rover fans out there, so we did a few upgrades. So on the side, we installed just a storage box on the left rear. On the right side, in the same spot, so that's kind of in/behind the wheel arch area, an extra fuel tank. Then we installed new shocks. Soon we will fully overhaul our springs. And then upgraded steering rods, etc., just to make it a bit more reliable. Slightly different rims that come out a bit wider, just for a little bit of a firmer, not too wide, because we don't want to have it like looking like a monster truck, but just get a bit more steady, because Land Rover wheels are normally really coming in, and then narrow wheels, and we noticed with all the stuff that we carry on top, it kind of becomes a bit wobbly and unsafe, and you're like, what's happening? So that's what we did. That's mostly, yeah, so everything is basically custom. And then now we're planning a full overhaul with, like, it will be, we call it Rafiki 3.0. It will be a pop top, livable interior, everything basically new. So we're basically going to start from scratch in the coming months.
wow. That'll be exciting. A new chapter.
What did you want to say?
Yeah, it's okay. That's going to be exciting and a little bit scary.
Yeah.
I mean, before we left, I remember, as I said, I had no prior knowledge about Africa and overlanding in Africa. And Tobias was saying, yeah, well, after Africa, we're going to need a full rebuild of Rafiki. Like, it's going to get so much trouble. It'll most likely cost us as much as our savings to get it done again. And I was like, yeah, well, can't be that difficult or different from any other trip or like his Europe trip before. And now, after 3 years, we do see the impacts of traveling in Africa. Even though you say, like, we don't drive through very thick bushes to prevent scratching, we still have scratches.
It needs
There
you
is so
slip and
much.
slide. You have corrugation.
Yeah.
Like the interior is still fine, quality wise, build wise.
Yes,
So we have a
definitely.
lot of stuff like we want to rebuild it because of our needs and wishes. But then the mechanical stuff, Rafiki has done really well.
We're nearly at 500,000 kilometers
Yeah.
on Rafiki.
Wow. Wow.
Almost five. I think by the time we ship it, it's going to be 500,000 exactly. Yeah. But it has held up really well, but there are just so many small things because of the bad roads that you say, like, it does need some attention when we get it back.
Good wear and tear.
Yeah.
Equally, then, what are 5 pieces of equipment that you have to travel with? I'm assuming as photographers, maybe your camera is on that list.
Yeah, oh, definitely. The cameras and the drone are definitely on the list. If we are going, or when we are going on a new expedition, I'm sure we're going to be more thoughtful about what we're going to take. So because we both like photography, we have our own sets of equipment, and that's definitely a bit too much. So we're going to combine that and make sure we have the best of both, but not everything.
Not everything double.
Not everything twice, yeah. And then we have a drone. Unfortunately, is broken at the moment, but that's definitely, although it can give you some difficulties in Africa, it's something that we wouldn't have traveled without.
Yeah, so all the camera gear.
Yeah, that's one thing for sure. The water filter.
Yeah, water filter.
I mean, regardless of whichever one you might install, I think it's mandatory to have if you're going traveling.
And we do have backups there as well. So we now carry the Lifesaver jerry can as our main source of water and purification system. And then we have like a backpack water filter purification system. We have 2 of them, but we said if we're ever going to install a fixed water filtration system and water tanks, we're probably going to still be carrying the Lifesaver jerry can just because it's so easy to use.
Yeah, and so I mean, even with the best gear, you can still have problems at very unexpected moments. So having a backup is, yeah, I think we have a backup for everything in the car, basically. Like every vital piece of gear has at least one backup. So
yeah,
same goes for the water.
Third thing, I would say the toolbox for repairs. Also, we do all the maintenance ourselves. So we do everything. If we can, we do everything ourselves. So we have a toolbox that's so full with general tools, Land Rover specific tools, whatever, everything's in there.
Even when you're not that mechanically minded, it is helpful to have your tools with you, knowing the right size of everything, because we've been in workshops where people are used to working with Land Rovers. And I'm talking mostly West Africa because that was one of the stories that comes to mind right now. But they just use tools that kind of fit, but they damage your car or your nut or whatever in doing so. So being able to hand them the right tools and saying, hey, I don't know how this works, but at least you have the right tools to work with. It is really helpful. So yeah. And helping out others as well. Because I mean, we had our toolbox and helped one of our friends in Nigeria for 2 weeks. And I think you used a lot of our tools, right?
We couldn't have done it without our toolbox. Big toolbox.
And then 4th and 5th,
I had a saw. Yeah, so just some outdoor bush equipment. Like we have a little kit of a saw and
it's not little.
No, we have a huge saw and just some, how do you say, to cut the bush away, basically. So when a track becomes too narrow, we try to clear it a little bit, mostly to prevent damage from the paint. So having a little bit of a gardening / bush kit where you can clear the track with, that's really helpful, I would say. And then the coffee machine has fit.
Wow. Okay.
Do that.
I don't drink coffee anymore, hence my reply.
No, we have, and it's hard to pick a favorite because these days we use the Stanley pour over, which is like a stainless steel pour over for drip coffee without filters. You don't need a filter because it's integrated in it. So you don't need to buy stuff. It's just that thing and it works. And every now and then I love to have an espresso. So we have the Wakako Nanopresso for that one, which we've had for years. It's hard to pick a favorite because it depends on the moment.
You can never have too many coffee gadgets. What inspires you to explore?
Ooh, hard question.
I think for me, it's such a layered answer. First and foremost, I really like nature. So although after 3 years in Africa, I know what kind of scenery I like best, I think it really just still amazes me to go into different ecosystems, landscapes, countries, and get to learn more about like the natural systems. But with that, of course, comes, well, dealing with people, getting to know people and their culture. And that's been super, I'm trying to find the word, but like insightful on this trip as well, because you can have 2, I would say, almost the same ecosystems on the east side and the west side of Africa. And you meet the people and you see the ecosystem and it's so different. Like it's there's so many factors involved that you can never see something, regardless of what I'm referring to, as like one entity. It's always influenced by everything around it. Exploration for me is trying to put those puzzle pieces together and learning more about them, basically, and trying to enrich myself with this knowledge and with these experiences.
Yeah, and I think because we primarily set out, and that's what I've done before. Like in Europe, it's really been about being in the outdoors, living in nature. And that's also why we set out to go to Africa, to be in nature, to be in remote places. But then along the way, you kind of start to pick up like, but there are people everywhere. We have to deal with people on a completely different level, or you try to level the same, but on a completely different, in a completely different way, basically. And then it becomes about, okay, yes, we love to push ourselves to remote and wild places, but in the grand scheme of the whole trip, you learn so much about how the world works, how different countries are, how safe it is. That's a really big one. The people in general are really, just normal, I would say.
Yeah.
So primarily we set out to get really beautiful remote nature experiences, but I think Africa showed us that the world is so diverse in certain ways and so similar, or so similar in other ways, but also, and it's completely different than what we were expecting. Like
Yeah.
what we knew about Africa is like a fraction of what it is when you're really here. And I think, and that goes for landscapes, but mostly for how it is living, traveling here, how the people are, how they live their lives, how it works here. We didn't know any of these things.
And I think it's very funny because in the Netherlands, of course, we don't have real borders anymore. But you see and feel and experience the difference between someone from Austria and someone from Italy or Switzerland and Austria. You still see the differences. And because we don't have borders, it's really something culturally that you notice. In Africa, I was kind of expecting it to be more gradually. And yes, it has been gradual in a grand scope of things. But for example, in Tanzania versus Zambia, we think the people are really different.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see
So
that.
the landscape might be the same, the tribes might be the same, but somehow this invisible line makes your experience of the people, of their behavior, of our interactions, different.
Here
So
it's
it's really interesting to learn more about that. And I mean, if I would compare a Swiss person to an Italian person, it would even be something physically that you might be able to see.
Yeah.
And because I would say, and that this is something from research, not because I'm trying to be awkward in saying so, but we as Western people are less accustomed to noticing the differences in other races or other ethnicities. So, for example, it might be possible for a Zambian person to distinguish a Tanzanian person and a Zimbabwean person. But for me, based on physical traits, that's very difficult.
In the beginning.
Especially in the beginning, yeah. But being able to kind of notice those differences now in behavioral traits, well, you know and you see that you're learning things along the way.
Yeah.
So even though you might not notice day to day, you're picking up on these things.
And I think you said, so we noticed, depending on the region, you see a clear difference in the way people act and react, depending on which side of the border they are. But then in other regions, like their tribes kind of surpass the borders. So here now in closer to the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and we had it in Zimbabwe and Mozambique as well. Like you see that some tribes live on both sides of the border, and then sometimes you do see the differences between the tribes, but not on one side or the other side of the border. And because of their upbringing and their beliefs and just how their culture works, you really have to see, okay, how do I approach people here? Or how do I have to react when something happens? Because if people approach us here in Zimbabwe, we react in a completely different way than if that would happen in Kenya, for example. Because the people approach us with a different mindset, with different experiences from the past, or with different intentions. So just figuring out how that works all over Africa with all these different countries and different tribes has been really eye-opening.
That's interesting. You touched on it a little bit, but how do you engage with other people then, both locally and other travelers?
Well, I think to start with, just smile. Always smile and be open. We've done that with local people who might show or you may be gonna deal with corruption. So iOverlander is a great way to know about things that are ahead on the road, and some of the warnings are like corruption or corrupt police. But even then, a smile goes a really long way. And we were listening to a podcast yesterday saying that 70% or somewhere around that number of communication is, of course, nonverbal. You think, okay, there might be a language barrier, but we often see if your whole body is basically just friendly and welcoming, then it's easy to step into communication with someone else and to engage with other people. It's been so rewarding. I mean, we've been able to meet some people, well, so many people, but for example, in Namibia you have the Himba tribe. We didn't want to, I don't want to say anything bad, but we didn't want to pay any Himba tribes to sit around with them in a circle and get to know more about their culture, but we would like to have, or we were looking forward to have, like a really authentic experience. So we said we'll just see if by chance we meet some people. And we actually had a family herding their sheep, and we were camped somewhere. They came to us with their sheep, with their children. One of the sheep fell into the water. And it passed away, unfortunately. And we were so fortunate to be in that moment and to communicate with them through nonverbal language, because of course they didn't speak the same language as us, and to be part of that moment was really, really special. So I think we like to just wait for things to happen by chance. We're not really the people who go into a tribe to, well, often by paying, get to learn things about them.
Yeah, we would rather
Yeah.
interchange experiences, talk about our stories, and if they need something and we can help, maybe we still do that, of course, but just going open-minded into everything and just seeing what happens, yeah, that's what opened a lot of doors for us. And even if we drive through a remote region, or everywhere actually, we always drive with our windows down when going through a village. So
Also
you're
because
not,
the aircon is broken 90% of the time.
yeah, the air conditioning doesn't really work, but just having the windows open allows you to connect and level with people. It makes travel in certain regions in Africa crazy intense, because if you drive into a city or a village, everything is there. It's so loud. But because you drive with your windows open, people don't really see you as another tourist just cruising through, or I don't know, they kind of see you as another person instead of that rich guy with the big truck with his, I don't know, blinded windows. You're
Just an
just
easy
there.
way to get in touch.
Yeah. And if you stop in the village and everybody has seen you driving with your windows open, the whole connection is completely different. People approach you way differently. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
stepping out of the car with a smile, always happy. And if you go in with a smile and open-minded, it will mostly work out. And if there is that one bad apple that has different intentions, you'll notice soon enough. And then
Nimba has
yeah.
been a true like lifesaver in that way. I don't know how your dog is, but ours just picks up on vibes and energy instantly. Whenever someone comes to us with a different approach, or well, I would say less friendly approach, she will notice and she'll start barking.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're happy to give everyone a fair chance, but somehow she always knows when someone comes asking for something in a very annoying way, or well, you know
Yeah.
how it goes. So
And maybe lastly, besides being open, humble as well, I think as overlanders, wherever we go, we're often way more equipped than anyone else on the road. So if somebody needs help, we just stop. We ask, do you need help? Do you need anything? It might just be our air compressor that they need to pressurize their tire, or they might need help with first aid or whatever, or they are stuck. Anything can happen. So we always try to be there for anybody we come across if they're in need of help. We have the time, we have the gear, we can at least ask, right?
yeah.
That's
And then
nice.
talking about meeting other overlanders, I mean, we love it. Africa is not that full of travelers, not that it happens every day or every week. Plus, we don't spend a lot of time at campsites. We generally sleep in the bush. So when we do meet people, we're just happy to communicate, to chat. I mean, we have some people that we met in Zambia in November. Then we met them again by chance in Kenya. And now we're going to meet them again in South Africa in a couple of months' time. So just being able to kind of stay in touch and to meet each other in different places around the world has been so, so cool.
Yeah.
We still talk to a lot of people that we met on the West Coast, the West Africa side. I don't know how it goes, like if it's every year the same, but we had a group of about 10 cars driving around the same season with us down to South Africa. And a lot of these people we are still in touch with today.
A lot of them are already back home, but we just keep exchanging voice memos on WhatsApp on a weekly basis. Yeah.
And it's just great, just sharing stories. I think it can be a bit difficult sometimes to connect with people at home who don't have the same experiences, to tell them what you're going through. And to be able to connect with other travelers on a deeper level has been really, really meaningful.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really good. Why is it important that we embrace global cultures?
I think we touched on it already a little bit, but I think when you start traveling, especially like cultures in Europe, looking back now, back in Europe, I thought Europe was super diverse. Now I think, yes, it's diverse, but it's kind of similar. Seeing what we know now, I think it's so good to get that perspective, to see why people, I don't know, live how they live or how they react because of their experiences of the past, or even with food, like, certain cuisines have certain foods, but why? And now that we're here, we see, if people come to Europe, they live like that because they live like that over here, or their cuisine is like this because their sceneries are like that. You get such a better understanding of the world and the differences. You get to notice the differences and the similarities, I would say. And I think therefore you get to appreciate the similarities and the differences more, and different cultures become less distant or scary, I would say. I think that's the biggest takeaway. You notice, kind of accept that people are different, and that's a positive thing sometimes.
Yeah, I think traveling, embracing global cultures really humbles you, because just we can feel so on top of the world in the western part of the world, thinking that we have it all figured out. But then you come here and they might do things so differently. And my Western thinking is, why would you do it like that? And then you dive into it and you ask questions and you learn and you're like, wow, okay, so the solution that we have to a problem, or the way we approach things, yes, it might be a good way, but that doesn't mean there's not another good way. So being able to experience the ingenuity and creativity and resilience and like the way people approach things in life, being able to learn from other cultures is so enriching. I will go back a more humble person than I was when I left. So I think that's one of the I think being humble is a really good thing to be. So going home more humble is, I think, a really nice change, and yeah, what this trip brought me.
That's amazing. Have you had any challenges that you've experienced on your trip?
Oh yeah.
You still have an hour or two? Yeah, definitely. From visa challenges, because we set off without any visas, and we decided to figure it out along the way. And I think that's still the best way for people to go into a trip. Because if you arrange your visas back home, your trip becomes kind of set, because you have a certain amount of months to get somewhere, because then your visa expires.
But some people only have
If you have a short amount of time, fix it back home.
Yeah.
Go on that trip. You don't have to bother about going into embassies and everything. Perfect. If you're on the road for longer and you have that freedom, arrange everything along the way. But that also meant for us, for example, that our Nigeria visa, we had to arrange it in Benin. Took 2.5 weeks. So you have to be super flexible timings and think things will work out eventually. So visa things were a bit of a thing. We had
like environmental changes, just heat, rainy season, accepting that you might be full of grime for 7 days because you're in a really remote area with little water.
Yeah, we had car problems. We have had
You have
little
to
car.
give in to Africa, I think.
Yeah, biggest challenge, I would say one of the longer lasting challenges was when we lost the core plug of the engine. So we losing coolant in the jungles of Gabon, and then we had to cover the country from the southeast to the northwest, about, what was it, 800 kilometers?
Yeah.
through the jungle with an engine that kept breaking down and leaking. And then we had to fix it, wait a day in the jungle, and continue the trip. That took forever to cover that distance while fixing the car and stuff like that. So that was a really long adventure and a really long challenge and really challenging at the moment and a really cool story to look back upon.
Yeah. I don't know. You've lived in Africa, right, Charles?
Yeah, I grew up in Mali. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have that same feeling there's like type A and type B fun? Like type A is when you're like instantly fun, and type B fun is like challenging in the moment, but a good story to tell afterwards.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So that's what we have a lot. I think challenges are always temporary. I mean, you can deal with extreme heat, with floodings, with being stuck. We were stuck in Zambia in November in the rainy season last year. And in the moment, you're like, what did we get ourselves into? And I mean, it's like super challenging and it's a long story to tell. And then you look back upon it and you're like, it's one of the best memories that I have of Africa because it was so, well, character building, I would almost say, teaching you things about yourself, but also we were stuck there with other local people. So challenges are, for me, a type B kind of fun. Not always good in the moment, but they will build character, resilience, whatsoever, and are a good story to tell afterwards.
Yeah. That makes sense. So on the flip side, then, what have been the most meaningful moments for you?
A good one. I think every moment with meeting people is like a memorable moment. Like a really small thing was when I went to the market in Senegal and I decided last minute to wear a scarf. And we came from, I think it was either customs office or something. So I was exhausted and everything. And I decided to wear a scarf. And behind my back, the local market woman was making a heart to Tobias for me because I was doing that. And it's something that just sticks with me to this day. Like it was such a little thing to do to show respect and to be, just respectful to them. But the fact that it was appreciated and communicated with this little heart is really memorable. We've had instances where we were invited by people like Morocco with the two boys.
I think it's a lot of the time it's the moments that the barrier between locals and tourism breaks away and you just really connect with people and you get to spend time with them without you feeling you owe them something or they want something from you, just when you really get to connect and then take on from there, and then you get to experience food together, share stories. I think that happened with a family in Morocco. That happened when we got stuck in Zambia and we were helping out the local people and then they were helping us. It's so hard to to give you one example, but it's often when you manage to break the barriers away and then just connect with people locally and then really get maybe meaningful relationships, even if it's just for a day or a few days, but is the ones you remember.
Yeah. That's special. How has exploration changed you?
Well, I think what I just said, that it humbled me, just really changing my perspective of the world and changing me. I've done a lot of like introspection, like the experiences that we had. You learn so much, and I think the full impact of being in Africa or on the road for 3 years is not gonna really set until we might be home for a year or something. Because I think things like this will only come to you and will fully, you can fully embody them once you're out of the situation. So it might take a while before we, how do you say that? Like,
fully know how it changed us. Think, looking back at past experiences or talking to other overlanders who've gone home and seeing what we, experience on a daily basis, is that we've grown to be more adaptive, to be more confident. I think we were confident back home, but I think now you really know what you want in life, how you want it. It's really rough to say it like that. But
also different confidence, maybe. Like really be able to depend on yourself.
Yeah,
like
it's
you
more
can,
like that.
I don't know what the English saying would be, but we would say like shout off the tower, which means like you feel really empowered and confident to be able to get a job done, for example. But because we've lived through so many challenging times, I know what stuff I'm made of right now. So I know that even though I might get stuck be barefoot, knee deep in the mud. Everything's going to be fine. Yeah.
It's crazy because you will be, when you're back, I think when we are back home, we will be like empowered and confident and present on the one side and really humble on the other side. Humble towards other cultures, to other people, and humble about our experiences maybe, and empowered in the steps that we want to take in the future, for example, because we've grown to be confident due to all the challenges that we've overcome in the past. The challenges here are definitely way different and more challenging than most of the stuff that we've experienced back home. Because on a day-to-day level, you think, oh, this is a huge challenge. And it's like, yeah, it's just this tiny little thing that you make really big because it's just a different way of life.
Yeah.
Do you think, this is a different question that I don't have written down, but when you go back to your home, it's hard then to connect with people who haven't done the experience you've had, where you said, like, it's easier to relate to those who have done it because it's like an eye-opening experience. And once you know, then you know.
Yeah, it's what we notice now already. When we talk to our friends, family who haven't done anything like this, it's really hard to keep a conversation going because we're not involved in their lives on such an intensive manner that we don't really get into the details remotely. So then it will be, how are you doing? How is work? How is the house? Conversation done. And they don't really get to ask questions back, a little bit maybe, but they don't relate. If we say, yeah, the roads were challenging, they have no clue what it means. And all the challenges that we have to overcome, they think they know, but they kind of don't.
I mean, it's nice. They try. They really try. Like the friends that we have, they try. But I mean, if you sit with friends who have done some overlanding or who have visited Africa, it's a different conversation. Like you can dive into an anecdote and really say, I felt the same thing back in another country or another moment. So the conversation keeps on going. And as you describe it, and you're very correct to do so, it's more like either an interview, but because they don't have anything to relate to what we're describing, it's difficult for them, to ask that follow-up question or to really internally feel what we're talking about.
At the moment, we have more conversations with fellow overlanders, even if they're home already, but looking at how often we are in contact with friends and family, and then the overlanders that we've met in the past years, we're in contact with the fellow overlanders way more and for way longer, I would say. And I really appreciate having them, because if we only had our friends and family back home who've never experienced anything similar, it's really hard to just talk about your experiences. And thanks to the other overlanders, we get to share stuff and maybe, I don't know, take some pressure off if something intense happened and we really want to just flush it out there.
And it's nobody's fault. Like, I mean, we're saying that friends and family back home might not understand. It's not their fault, so we don't want to blame anyone.
They really try.
It's just a mismatch of experiences. And I mean, if that's the way it is, my mom's a nurse. She might talk about things that happen at the hospital, and I might think I understand, but I never will completely. I mean, if we just stay communicative and try to understand, then that's all everyone can ever do. And we really appreciate the trying part. So just, trying to understand each other's perspectives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Explore More has a mantra, which is explore more of the world, engage with others, and embrace global cultures. What does that mantra mean to you?
Yeah, I think we've covered so much already. Just being an adventurer, being an explorer, an overlander, a traveler, whatever name you want to give it. I think your mantra is a really nice nudge to tell people like, hey, yes, you can go to the beach and you can go in Spain. If you're local from Europe, for example, you can go to Spain, you can go to South Africa, you can go even further away. But your mantra really encourages people and nudges people in the right direction to not just enjoy the beach and the sunset, but to really dive deeper. So Spain will have a different cultural value than Mexico or than South Africa, and really being able to grasp that and to immerse yourself in it. I think that to me is part of your mantra. Like on the surface, all of these countries that we visited reminded us of something that we already saw. So, I mean, parts of Tanzania reminded us of Gabon, and parts of Kenya reminded us of Namibia. And we could have easily said, like, yeah, it's the same environment, the same landscape. We don't need to see this. But really going there, as we said, open-minded, humble, respectful, and you learn so much about people that live there, their cultures, their beliefs, political, well, standpoints or issues or whatsoever, and always keeping that open mindset, teaches you so much. And I think that's what your mantra has really given us.
I also think for a specific trip, it will enrich the travels. And the thing you take back back home from it, is that nothing is black and white. Everything is a little bit gray. So if people respond in a certain way, or you see something happening, or you see something on the news, you know that it's not black and white. There's always this huge gray area, which makes you more, I don't know, open, understanding to what's happening or how people live their lives. Yeah.
If you don't explore, then you don't capture that knowledge to have a better understanding.
Exactly.
You have to be there, see it, feel it, to really know what it's like, and to get not the full picture. You never get the full picture, but to get a better picture of how a region is.
And I mean, like for us, we've now explored Europe and Africa and sparsely some countries around the world. But for us now, Africa, we feel like we have gotten a good sense of most of the countries. So we can take that knowledge home. But by no means can we now say we know stuff about South America or Far Asia. Like, we would have to go and explore in order to also gather that bit of knowledge. So, you can't generalize and say, okay, I've explored a little bit. Now I'm full of knowledge and like I grasp everything. So I think it's a continuous process, because by the time we have seen the world, basically, if that's a thing, then Africa might be an experience 10 years ago. So we might have to go back to Africa in order to refresh our knowledge, or it's an ongoing thing.
She's making good excuses to keep traveling and keep going places, so I like it.
Yeah, that's very true though. What advice would you give to those who are thinking about life-changing adventure?
Do it.
Yeah, definitely do it. We've gone in here fully. We left everything behind. We left nothing behind, because Rafiki is what we have. But we just trusted that the experiences would be valuable, that it would be a good time. If not then looking back at it, and coming from developed countries, Western society, it can be challenging to get back to it, but there will be something to get back to. So what do you really have to lose? There will always be that job you can get back to. Your friends and family will still be there. So just try it. And overall, oftentimes you think it might be scary, it might be challenging. If you just go in open-minded and be adaptive, things will work out. And then looking back, in all honesty, nothing is really too challenging to overcome. And it's actually much easier than you maybe thought when you were still back home, and less scary. Because talking to friends and family, Africa is really scary. Being here, we're just here, right? Yeah,
and I think if I reflect back on myself 3 years ago and like on the verge of going on this adventure, there are so many things you can worry about. And I think one of the common worries is, will I get a job when I have like a gap in my curriculum vitae? Because I've been traveling, doesn't that feel like I'm just neglecting the fact that I have to work and stuff? And so you might make up all these excuses in your mind. And this is of course what we experienced, and I think many more travelers have. You grow so much, and if you're able to reflect on that, and if you're able to communicate that, like, okay, I traveled for 2 months, I traveled for 6 months, or a year or longer, you always take something back home. So it's not like you're standing still. I think the opposite, actually. I think you're growing faster than ever when you're on an adventure. And if you want to get back to a full-time job or your previous job or a new job afterwards, and you can communicate what you learned and how you grew, I think that's like, if that is a worry someone has, then that's something to take in mind. Like, you're not standing still when you're going on an adventure. Yeah. And if someone's scared, because it might seem like too big of an endeavor, try to do something smaller first. I mean, the why I was able to go and take such a leap with a stranger is because I spent 10 months abroad on my own in unknown countries. Like, there's so many pre-steps that we took basically to get to this stage. It's not like in most cases, someone says, okay, well, I've never traveled before and now I'm going to the most remote country there is and I might never come back. Like, just start smaller and prepare yourself for that big thing that is still a bit scary.
That's great advice.
At least that's what I would say.
Yeah, and know that there's always this huge travel community out there who's all willing to give you advice. And if you're traveling, they're always somewhere around you. And if you don't dare to do something on your own or you need help, just ask. There are so many lovely people here on the road that the community is always there for you.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, on that note, how can people follow your adventures and get in contact with you?
So we have the socials, Instagram, Facebook as Rafiki on Tour. Then we have the website, rafikiontour.com, which has reviews of the gear we use, helpful blogs recapping some parts of our adventure, updates, some nice lists and stuff as well, to help you get going. And we have Patreon, Rafiki on Tour as well. That's basically it. So it's mostly the website for information, and then we try to bring across information and inspiration on the socials. And I would say Instagram is the best way to follow us because we have the posts, but also the stories mostly on a daily basis.
You can find us personally, but I wouldn't recommend because, well, we never post anything. We're not active.
No.
So Rafiki on Tour is really,
everywhere
and where we are at.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been amazing hearing your perspectives on everything and learning more about your journey. I'm still amazed that you got together just on a whim.
Yeah.
Us too.
Yeah, us too.
Well, thank you for having us today and for listening to our endless stories.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a pleasure, and I will wish you goodwill on the rest of your trip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for watching the show. If you want to share feedback, please hit the comments below or head over to exploremore.com/feedback for more information. If you want to see more interviews and other content, then please hit the subscribe button. Cheers.